Chairman Cummings, Ranking Member Jordan, members of the committee, thank you for calling this hearing and for the privilege of testifying before you today. I am proud to live not near, but on the U.S.-Mexico border in El Paso, Texas, a community that has long been safe and secure, a modern-day Ellis Island. For 7 months, my office has facilitated delegation visits to El Paso, 10 so far and more to come, and I'm grateful for all of those who've been able to or will soon join us to bear witness to what is happening at the hands of the U.S. government. There is no doubt that the increasing number of migrants at our southern border has presented a challenge. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years, our country has failed to live up to our founding values when addressing that challenge. Before I focus on what our government is doing, let me tell you what my community is doing. For years, but especially in this last year, El Paso has stepped up, helping feed, shelter, and offer hospitality to thousands of migrant families released by DHS week after week. My community, with a fraction of the resources available to the federal government, has responded more strategically, thoughtfully, and compassionately than the federal government has. El Paso knows that this is not a matter of resources, but a matter of will. El Paso has had to stand up shelters on a moment's notice, transport hundreds of migrants daily using only volunteers, and we've opened our wallets and our hearts to ensure that every one of those vulnerable souls has a clean, safe place to stay once out of custody. El Paso made the choice to employ compassion and goodwill. And then we have the choice that our government has made. Our government, at the hands of this administration, has exhibited an incompetence and cruelty that has created a human rights crisis in our own country. Under the Trump administration, border communities have borne witness to the deaths of at least 6 children in government custody since September. Family separation, a practice called illegal by the United Nations, one which, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, inflicts deep, lifelong trauma. A policy so heinous that the sound of a weeping child secretly recorded in a detention facility moved even some of the most hardline anti-immigrant Americans. El Paso was the testing ground for child separation, a policy that continues to this day. We've seen severe overcrowding in Border Patrol processing centers that is so inhumane that the DHS Office of the Inspector General described it as dangerous because it represents an immediate risk to agents and migrants alike. We've seen conditions that dehumanize migrants, stripping them of their dignity, sending good agents into states of despondency, giving cover to bad agents who abuse their authority. There is long-term detention in ICE facilities where, in my district, a group of men requesting asylum who had been detained for nearly a year became so desperate they went on a hunger strike. They were force-fed and hydrated through tubes that were placed down their nose. Speaking through their pain and their bloodied tubes, they told me they would rather die in America than be sent back to India. We've seen migrant protection protocols. It's the administration's practice of sending legal asylum seekers into another country as they await their hearing, a violation of due process that puts vulnerable populations in danger. In one case, a woman had warned CBP about the danger she faced in Ciudad Juarez, was sent back to Mexico where she was kidnapped and brutally gang raped. My district is ground zero for these atrocities, and because my office inquires about these cases in line with my oversight responsibilities, I have become a target. These policies have created the humanitarian crisis and a moral one. I commend colleagues who've worked to address these issues, from Congresswoman Lofgren focusing on the root causes, to Congressman Raul Ruiz, who's focused on medical standards for migrants in CBP custody. I, too, have legislation that will be coming up shortly, H.R. 2203, the Homeland Security Improvement Act, which would increase accountability and transparency at DHS so that these conditions, these deaths, these abuses can be relegated to a dark moment in history. This is not about resources, and to prove it, One only needs to look at what El Paso, Texas has done without any. This is about having the will to treat people with dignity. We have the power to change this. Do we have the will?